Transportation Impact Handbook. Many of you know that in 2010, 2011, there were many changes to the growth management walls, rendering much of the Impact Handbook a bit out of date. So since 2011, we have been updating the handbook, and we would like to introduce the handbook and the major changes to you today. Today with us, we have many people who have helped to rewrite the handbook, and they're here today to go over the major changes and also to answer your questions if possible. We have Gary Sokolow, myself, Gina Bagnani from Florida DOT. We also have Janine Fear, Martin Guttenplan from CDM Smith, who helped us in much of the update. Though we all do not have formal speaking parts, all of us here have experience in different aspects of impact analysis, such as level of service calculations, growth management, and modeling. So we want you to ask questions, and we would, if we're able, we would like to answer all the questions to the best of our knowledge, and those who have the specific knowledge in the area where you have the questions will answer your questions. This is a quick overview of a fairly quick, thick document. We will concentrate on what's new and get you familiar with the layout of the handbook. Since this is just an overview, we plan to have future webinars and live training on the use of the handbook, and we will tell you how to sign up and keep current with the upcoming webinars and live training on the transportation side handbook shortly. Since this is a webinar, you will be muted. However, you can ask your questions in a question tab dialog box, as I will demonstrate shortly. Please ask your questions as they come up, and we will try to get to them as quickly as possible. I'm sure there will be questions that we can answer immediately, or questions of a philosophical nature. These we may have to discuss at a later time or send to you via email. I'm going to briefly discuss how you can participate in today's webinar using the GoToMeeting control panel. By clicking the orange arrow, you can open and close your control panel. From the View menu, you can also set the control panel not to auto-hide when inactive if you prefer to keep it always open. The audio pane provides audio information if the organizer has given attendees a choice. By default, you have joined the webinar via mic and the speakers. Click the audio setup to select your computer, speaker, or headset devices. If you prefer, you can join with audio via telephone by selecting Use Telephone, and the dialing information will be displayed, including an audio pin. If you would like to ask any questions of today's presenters over the phone, you must enter your audio pin in order to have your line unmuted. If you have a question, you can send them through the question pane. Simply type in your question and click Send. You may also raise your hand if you have a question. If you have joined us with the capability of using your microphone, we will then unmute you and you can ask a question that everyone can hear. We will be able to take questions and answers throughout today's webinar. At this point, I would like to turn the presentation over to Gary Sokolow.
Hey, thank you for being in there and taking the time to be with us today. As Gina said, I am Gary Sokolow, and I have been involved in the writing and rewriting of this handbook since 1997, and there have been a lot of changes. However, the principles of site impact analysis have really not changed. That's the good news. We've changed the name of the handbook this year by adding the word site to it, and you'll see it right there. This is to clarify what sort of impact handbook this is. You'll see later that our section has produced some more guidance that we did not have in the past, and we added the word site back to it. However, the website that you've always gone to for the Impact Handbook, and that's FDOT Transportation Impact Handbook, is still the same. And here is a link to that page. And at this point, I want you to know that after this presentation, we will be sending you the presentation handout, and we'll send it to you in PDF form. And I am hoping that most of these links will be live. If you have any problem with any of the links, let me know. But I do know that the links are live in the actual handbook. When you open the PDF version of this handbook, it opens with bookmarks on the left for easy navigation. You can see here we added the word site, just like we said, and to the subtitle we also tried to clarify this handbook from other handbooks that the department and our section deal with. So it is now the Site Impact Handbook, Estimating the Transportation Impacts of Growth. I have had a chance to take a look at some of the people who have signed up for this class, but I would like to operate a poll right now to give you an opportunity to tell us more about the work function that you are in. So let me go to the polls, and here we are under Who Do You Represent? And what I'm going to do is launch the poll and do your very best to answer the poll. We know most of you are with DOT, wanted to get an idea of whether you were in permitting, traffic operations, planning, roadway design, or another portion of the department, or another portion of, let's say, your county government. Okay. The majority of you have voted, and I'm very pleased to see. I'm going to share this with you. Closing the poll. And I'm going to share it with you. And pretty soon you should see the results of the, okay. So those are the poll results. You can see a majority of you are in traffic operations, and a good number of you are in planning, or the ISD function of DOT, that's the Intermodal Systems Development portion, and as always, a lot of people from permitting are interested in these issues. Okay, I am going to hide this and move on to the next slide. Now, some things have changed since 2010, and Gina already mentioned that in 2010, 2011, there were a lot of changes in growth management. However, DOT is still responsible for many reviews. And even though we still have these responsibilities, they are confined to the restrictions placed on FDOT because of the latest legal statute changes, which Janine Fear and which Martin Guttenplan will be getting into in later chapters. Simply put, we used to have a lot of authority over changes to land use plans within local governments. We have become, in many cases, more partners with the local government entities in trying to find the best way to accommodate the growth and give us a good transportation system. I got another poll here, and I would like to know if any of you have ever used the 2010 version of the Site Impact Handbook, even though it was called the Transportation Impact Handbook at the time. So I'm going to launch this poll, and I'd be real interested in seeing what the answers are here. Okay. And if you could answer to the best of your ability here. Okay. Let me give you a little bit more time. Okay, very good. I am going to close the poll at this point and share it with you as soon as all the numbers are sent through cyberspace, which isn't as fast as you might think. And I got to tell you, when you see this, that I am very surprised. What this shows me is that we have a young crowd of people out there, you know, that might be new to some aspects of transportation site impact analysis. We have almost 60 people saying that they haven't used the last version, and we have almost 40% saying yes, and I added the one that 6% of you answered because I have to admit that if this was not one of my major job responsibilities, I think I would have answered, yeah, I've seen it in other people's offices. Matter of fact, I saw it in somebody's office this very morning. So I'm going to hide this poll, and you will have access to the answers of all of these later. And okay. So there are those poll results again. I'm going to hide them one more time. All right. So we're going to move on here. The reason that we have always been interested in transportation analysis for impacts of new development is that our main job is to protect the integrity and safety of the transportation system and to minimize the bad impacts, not only on the state system, but of the entire transportation network. And today, our emphasis is even more on just the automobile, and even more than just on the state major highways, that we are responsible for trying to get the best use of the entire system. And those of you that have attended any of our access management training know the importance of the maintenance of the entire system to help with the operations of the major system. Okay. In addition, this handbook is intended to offer guidance to all of our transportation partners, our local governments, our regional governments, and to enhance coordination in the existing review process. These partners include, as I said, local government, regional agencies, and also the development community. Even though this is more of an educational and how-to guide for reviewing, this is also a good handbook for people that are working for the development community to understand what we are going to be looking at. Something that I apologize that I have neglected to tell you is that there is a reason for these page number curls here. This is not the number of the slide, but this is the number of the page in the actual Site Impact Handbook, where you will find more detail on this. As we said earlier, this is should be a quick overview, but maybe this will help you get started in delving more into the subject. So what we're going to do today is focus on what is new in the handbook. This is not going to be an educational webinar on the techniques, but it will talk about some of the new techniques and changes of the techniques and laws. It's got 5 chapters in it. This is similar to the 2010 version of the handbook, with an introduction that gives an overview. Chapter 2, which is the largest chapter, on the transportation impact process. But since we do have some serious responsibilities with local government and regional governments, we have chapters on how to best work with governments on their comprehensive plan reviews, and in the developments of regional impact, those very large developments that you see and will probably be seeing more of in the future in this handbook. And of course, the most controversial of all, and I think probably the one in which decisions still are to be made, is Chapter 5, and that's on the mitigation of transportation impacts. From what we learned in the 2010 version from you is that there are certain portions of the handbook that came in very handy to you. One of them are the numerous resource guides that we have linked within the handbook itself, and this particular one's on the legal authority of the department, and checklists. These checklists, every single check on there is not going to be really applicable to all of them, but this gives you a good checklist to work from as you work together with the development community and the local governments, working with the DOT and the development community. And like the last one, we have a lot of appendices. What we did is we tried to find some of the either typical or best examples of some of the studies that have been done in recent years to give, especially those that are new to the field, or especially those people in smaller or medium-sized government entities, to have a better idea of what these reports, what these reviews do look like. Okay, Chapter 2 is the largest chapter. As I've said before, it is the technical guidance of transportation impact process. We cover a lot of material, from the guidance on trip generation and all the way to how to blend large-scale regional models and smaller analysis methods to work together to give us the best future traffic condition estimates. The objectives of a transportation study, quite basically and simply, are these. It's not just an exercise in bureaucracy, though I don't have to tell you, many times it turns out that way. The main purpose is to try to determine what the future problems might be from this growth and how we can start working on fixing them now. The other important part of the transportation study is not technical at all. It's the forum in which the stakeholders get together and view and review their different ideas and try to reach some sort of agreement. Even though this is the largest chapter, I did mention that the principles of the trip and the transportation impact process, the principles have not changed much, and so much of the guidance is still the same. We didn't recreate the concept of trip generation too much, and we still use large-scale transportation models in some cases, and in other cases we use a simpler what we call hand distribution, though most of those are now done by computer also. Just like the 2010 version, we have tried to encourage more of a look at multimodal ways to solve some of the future transportation problems. The last handbook was totally based on the four-step transportation process, and it's where the modal split comes near the end, and we have a realization now that many communities, instead of waiting for what a model tells you is going to be the percentage of people using transit, that they have more of a vision of a community that's going to use transit, and so we need to be aware of that. A number of important things have happened, manuals and guidance, since the 2010 version of this last handbook came out. The trip generation manual, the 9th edition, is now out. Somebody might end up telling me that the 10th is out soon. There's been a change in the way trip internalization has been done, with a new report from the National Science Foundation, NCHRP, of course, the new Highway Capacity Manual, and Florida DOT itself in 2013 came out with the latest level of service tables, software, and the quality of level of service handbook. We've tried, in addition to that, to provide more guidance from news sources. So this is a screenshot of some of the linked guidance documents that you will find in there for the multimodal guidance to you. As I said, in 2013, we produced the latest in a series of the quality of level of service handbooks. There have been numerous improvements and changes that will make a difference in this analysis and in the outcome of planning level service analysis. There has been a simplification of our level of service policy, and just not going to go into it heavily here, where the level of service standard should be D in the urbanized areas and C in the rural areas. Earlier you saw that one of the big changes was the standard K factor. This is a very important peaking factor that's used to determine, especially from future models, models that predict daily traffic to the future, trying to figure out what the peak hour traffic is. We recognize now that we can get a better analysis using this, what we call the standard K factor. And this is, again, a screenshot from the handbook, and the link will take you to the papers and the studies that were used to come up with these. We decided also to add more practical advice that we found. In this case, there has been a very active transportation engineer planner blogosphere out there that I have found what I consider better information than I've ever found in school, and I didn't want to keep all of that a secret. This is a page from a blog post from a guy named Mike, and he has his blog is called Mike on Traffic. He's not in Florida, but he does give some really good practical advice. And in this particular case, his blog was talking about, Google Maps and Earth has just done wonders for our profession. However, these are some of the things that you need to look at on the ground. Okay, and so some of these are in the handbook, and some of these just have the links to the practical advice. Now, what was interesting to me is that Mike on Traffic was cautioning us on the use of aerials, but also had a very good article on what aerials are appropriate for in traffic studies and to help give guidance on that. Again, trying to get more practical everyday advice, and we would like to continue that. In the past 2 years, we have added 2 more guidance books, and those books are the Interchange Access Request User's Guide and the Traffic Analysis Handbook. These are different than, there is overlap with the Site Impact Handbook. For instance, many times your new developments are around interchanges, or they're requesting new interchanges. In that case, the Interchange Access Request User's Guide would be something that you would really need to look at in order to get the best study. The Interchange Access, then the Traffic Analysis Handbook, I don't have a screenshot of that, gets into some detailed use of some of the micro-simulation tools that are used, especially in interchange areas. And we do know that sometimes we have to work at that level. And these 2 guides are very good references for guidance in using these micro simulation, macro simulation models that are changing every day, and some of the cautions and some of the things that will help you review that. Now, many of you are aware that the trip generation report has changed its name to the Trip Generation Manual. And I know there's a lot of politics in that. Unfortunately, we do try to send you to free information, but if you were to click on the Trip Generation Manual icon here within the handbook, it's just going to take you to the ITE store, where you will be encouraged to spend a lot of money on the Trip Generation Manual. I think this might be a good time to tell the people at, especially at DOT, that we here in this office please consider us your technical bouncing board for some of your trip generation questions. We will do our best to give you an educated answer on some things that are sometimes highly subjective. Knowing that, since 2010, we being FDOT, have actually done a number of our own independent trip generation studies. We've looked at convenience markets with gas pumps. As many of you know, the entire industry of fueling and convenience markets have changed dramatically from the earlier days. You'll probably notice there are less gas stations than there used to be, but the ones that we have, many of them have 12 to 20 fueling positions, and the convenience markets that used to only be 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet, or like 5,000 feet. They'll have sandwiches. They'll have any number of things that we never used to see in gas stations. This is something that we did a lot of research on, and we're encouraging, of course, other states to do this research to find out more about it. Coming soon will be a webinar on how we plan to use the information that we got from this these studies that we have. That's been a big question that a lot of you who I know are out there have asked us. Okay, you did all this study, what do we do with it now? Do we use this instead of ITE? And I wish I had an easy answer for you right now, but we are working with this trip generation, the trip generation recommendations report, which really are just recommendations at this point on how to handle some of the new data that we do have. We're particularly proud of the work that was done earlier on what are now called variety stores. You know them here in the state as Dollar General and Family Dollar, and during the economic downturn, these stores were the ones that were actually doing an excellent job at increasing their market share. Those of you that are familiar with those stores may have been using freestanding retail or special retail, but we did find that there are significant differences between these variety stores and a lot of the commercial uses before, so much so that the Institute of Transportation Engineers, in its 9th edition, which is out, have added a new land use. That's the variety store, 814. Okay. This just shows a little bit more on that. Another big land use that we looked at is, like I said, were the large fueling and convenience markets with gas pumps, and noticed some distinct differences between them and the old gas stations. Not going to get into that right now. That'll be part of a future webinar just on trip generation. Many of you know that one of the reasons that we got interested in this was the influx of the Wawa convenience markets coming down from Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and these are even larger than some of the new ones being built. I could actually make the comment that Wawa has really encouraged Racetrack and the others to build similar facilities to compete in this market that is actually, again, doing well, like the variety stores. An interesting sidelight is that my son's girlfriend, her family is from the province of Sichuan in China, and we were there about 2 years ago, and noticed a whole chain of convenience markets, also called Wawa, and no connection at all. And I just needed to take a picture of it to show you that Wawa is everywhere. Not really, they're two different stores, but they are both convenience markets. Another big change that happened in the last few years, especially the downturn, that growth rates are not always a given. Again, on page 65, you'll find this is a national guide, a national graph of what the economic downturn did to traffic. There has been an upswing, but I think the important lesson we have from this is that growth is not always a given. Many of you have probably already received traffic studies that assumed not growth, but actually a decrease in background traffic. We say in the handbook, we're not going to take a stand on that, but it is important, whatever you do for your projections on background traffic, that it be based as much as possible on the local traffic and local development potential of the area. And that does change by city, by section of Florida. The whole science of doing trend research is one that I always found interesting, even way back in school. But I found that as I did more of it as a professional, I found that I felt like this guy here, that I was always just using the average of the high and the low, and we need to be more intelligent than this. On the subject of internal capture, it has changed because of this NCHRP report. That's a national report done by Texas Transportation Institute. They've created a new methodology based on 4 studies around the United States, to add to the 3 older ones that were used before. Those 3 were from Florida. What you see on the right is a part of the spreadsheet, which is free, and it is also linked in the handbook for using the latest way of calculating internal capture. They've added restaurants and cinema and hotel to the number of land uses that they have. Over the last few years, we had the Center for Urban Transportation Research at the University of South Florida add to the information that we have on trip internalization by studying 4 very distinct areas in the state of Florida. They did their own research, some strictly suburban, some downtown, neo-traditional, and have come up with what even Mike on Traffic actually recognized the work that was done, and you can see that we're getting even closer to being able to project the real after build out cordon counts when we use some of the data that was found at the University of South Florida, Qatar. All right, this is a time for us to answer questions, and I was hoping that
I don't see any questions, Gary, unless somebody wants to raise their hands and we can unmute them.
Okay. I highly encourage the questions and highly encourage everybody to make sure that you sign up for our future webinars on this. So if there are no questions from the attendees, I want to thank you again, and I am aware that many of the attendees out there know things, know more things than I do about some of these, and to feel free also to share with us. So at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Janine Fear, and Janine was one of the major authors of this chapter, and she is very experienced in this, having worked for the what used to be called the Department of Community Affairs, now the Department of Economic Opportunity, Community Planning. And so with that, I am trying to give Janine the keyboard and mouse control, and we will get that, and I will move it. Okay, Janine, it's all yours now.
Great. Thank you, Gary. As Gary said, my name's Janine Fear, and I worked on the update to this handbook. And today I'm going to be guiding all of you through the highlights of Chapter 3 with the focus on the changes since the 2010 update. Now, the purpose of Chapter 3 in this handbook is to describe how the department assists the local governments and other state agencies such as Department of Economic Opportunity with comprehensive plan and plan amendment reviews. Now, as Gary was alluding to, the Department of Economic Opportunity contains the former Department of Community Affairs and acts as the state's state land planning agency now. Chapter 3 also describes the different types of local government comprehensive plan amendments, including future land use map amendments or FLUMs and text amendments, as well as additional other land development reviews for large-scale planning and FDOT's roles and responsibilities in regards to growth management. Now, like I said, what I'll go over today is the highlights as it pertains to those changes which impact Chapter 3 since 2010. And future webinars will go into more depth in regards to this chapter, including any acronyms that I may forget to describe. Now, since the 2010 update of this handbook, there has been major changes to growth management law, with the most significant coming from House Bill 7207 in 2011 and House Bill 319 in 2013, as well as additional small legislative changes that occurred in 2012. These changes would shift the focus and breadth of growth management laws, which ultimately impacted three important administrative rules for growth management and transportation, which are Rules 9J5, 9J11, and Rule 1494. Now, some of these changes are reflected in the latest version of the Department Procedure number 525-010-101, which pertains to the review of local government comprehensive plan amendments and plans. Currently, this procedure is under review to continue those updates to the procedure as it pertains to changes in the legislation for growth management. Procedure number 525-010-101 provides guidance and focus for district reviewers in regards to the review of comprehensive plan amendments as well as the review of other large-scale planning programs such as sector plans. Excuse me. Now, talking about changes, let's go in a little bit more depth in regards to House Bill 7207, since that was the biggest shakeup in terms of growth management for the state. House Bill 7207 became effective on June 2nd, 2011. This legislation focuses the state's role on growth management process primarily to what's considered important state resources and facilities, while providing local governments with greater control over planning decisions that affect the growth of their communities. A good example of this is with, some of you may or may not know about these, but we used to have what was called the evaluation and appraisal reports for local governments. In the past, they were required to submit an evaluation and appraisal report, or EAR, to the Department of Community Affairs, which is now the Department of Economic Opportunity, for a determination of sufficiency before updating a local comprehensive plan. These days, they do not have to do that anymore. They just have to submit a letter saying they will do EAR-based amendments and then submit those to the DEO. Now, please note that with that change, the law still requires that all local governments have to have adopted a local government comprehensive plan to guide their future growth and development. In particular with House Bill 7207, there are several other changes in regards to growth management. Those changes include, but are not limited to, changes to state review methods. They repeal statutory provisions for concurrency designations such as Transportation Concurrency Exception Areas, or TCEAs, Transportation Concurrency Management Areas, or TCMAs, and Multimodal Transportation Districts, or MMTDs. As alluded to, this bill also redefined the role of DEO as a state land planning agency, or SLPA, as well as other reviewing agencies such as FDOT in regards to comprehensive plan amendments. A significant change also will be discussed later, much later towards the end of my portion of this presentation, is in regards to revisions to the sector plan and rural land stewardship area programs. Now, one of the first changes I want to talk about for a little bit before going into a bit more detail later is in regards to state review methods. And now what I'm talking about with state review methods is the review methods for comprehensive plans and plan amendments. In the past, there was basically two methods. What I call the regular method for comprehensive plan amendment review, which many of you might remember as the 60-day review, and the small-scale comprehensive plan amendment review. Now, we will not go into very much detail in this presentation regarding small-scale comprehensive plan reviews, mostly because not much has changed in regards to these reviews. These are pertaining to future land use map amendments that are 10 acres or less. They're a bit more site-specific. What I am going to talk about is what happened with what was considered the regular comprehensive plan review method or process. With House Bill 7207, that process changed, and actually you could consider split into two different methods of state review. One called the expedited and the other the state coordinated. Each method consists of different commenting and submission processes, which I will go into a bit more detail in a little bit. But these changes, please take note, impact how and when FDOT can coordinate and review comprehensive plan and plan amendments. And in conjunction to that, with House Bill 7207 beginning this, there was another change which impacts not the how and when, but the what in regards to review comprehensive plan and plan amendments. And that is transportation concurrency. Prior to House Bill 7207, statewide concurrency was mandatory for transportation. But with House Bill 7207 and subsequent changes such as House Bill 319, transportation concurrency is no longer mandatory for the state, with House Bill 319 providing local governments the ability to either rescind or continue implementation of transportation concurrency. Now let's make note that even though transportation concurrency is now optional, many local governments throughout the state still implement transportation concurrency and have not chosen to rescind their transportation concurrency. As of July 2013, only 23 county and municipal governments around the state have rescinded transportation concurrency. And to put that in a bigger perspective, as many may know, there's 67 counties within the state of Florida, and there's about 410 municipal governments. Now, as I mentioned briefly earlier, because of the House bills such as 7207 coming into play, we saw changes for administrative rules which impact growth management as well as transportation planning. During 2011, with the growth management overhaul in the laws, we saw the loss of 9J5 and 9J11. 9J5 was the growth management rule regarding criteria and requirements for comprehensive plans and their amendments, evaluation appraisal reports or EARs, and the determination of compliance for all amendments. Rule 9J11 provides procedure for the state for the submission and the review of those comprehensive plan amendments. Even though those rules have been repealed, portions of these rules have been incorporated into Chapter 163, Part 2, particularly in Sections 163, 3177, 163, 3184, and 163, 3187 of the Florida statutes. In 2012, with the revisions to concurrency coming into play slowly with House Bill 7081, we saw the redefining of the role of the department in conjunction with House Bill 7207, and we saw the repeal of Rule 1494. Now, the importance of Rule 1494 is that it originally designated minimum level service standards for the state for just for the roadways. The impact of this repeal removed the department level of service authority in regards to statewide highway system, to strategic intermodal system, and trip-funded roadways. Instead of enforcement from the department, the local governments are only now recommended to use department-suggested level service standards. Now, I just went over basically the majority of the changes. So let's go into a little bit more regarding Chapter 3 and how those changes impact certain portions of this chapter and how you use it. And we're going to start talking about with comprehensive plans and plan amendments and the role of Department of Economic Opportunity as it relates to FDOT. DEO is responsible for the overall review process as it acts as a state land planning agency and is the agency with statutory authority to challenge whether plan amendments are consistent or not consistent with state law. In this aspect, and this is a bit different in some ways from how DEO as DCA was prior to 2011, DEO provides, you could think of it more of a partnership, a technical assistance aspect to local governments now. And they are directed to help communities find creative solutions and help foster vibrant and healthy communities, yet still protect the functions of important state resources and facilities. If plan amendments may adversely impact important state resources or facilities, upon request by local government, DEO is required to coordinate multi-agency assistance if needed. But usually what you probably see in regards to Chapter 3, as we're going to start talking about, is reviewing agencies, particularly FDOT's role with DEO in regards to comprehensive plan and plan amendment reviews. Now, FDOT's role in conjunction with DEO is as one of its reviewing agencies for proposed comprehensive plan and plan amendments as well as adopted. FDOT will provide comments to local governments and the Department of Economic Opportunity dependent upon the process, which I will discuss on the next slide, of amendment review. Per Section 163.31.84 of the Florida statutes, FDOT's role is limited to adverse impacts on transportation, resources, and facilities of state importance, which is within basically its jurisdiction. This is a bit of a change, as Gary was talking about earlier, to DOT's jurisdictional role in commenting. They had a bit more breadth, more abilities to comment on other issues impacting transportation facilities such as land use. Now, please note, I know I mentioned that DOT's role is limited to adverse impacts on transportation resources and facilities of state importance. But please note that that terminology is not defined in the Florida statutes. But if you go back to procedure number 525-010-101 regarding the comprehensive plan review, that actually has a definition that could be used by the DOT staff, defining those facilities and associated right-of-way as for those on the state highway system, strategic intermodal system, and national highway system as those resources that FDOT can comment on for comprehensive plan and plan amendments. Oops, there's another note I should talk about in regards to this. As you can see on the graphic, FDOT was not the only agency that was impacted by House Bill 7207 in regards to the jurisdiction of its comments. What that House bill did was, previously there was a lot of overlap between the agencies for commenting on comprehensive plan and plan amendments. What House Bill 7207 did, it basically sectioned everyone off into their own jurisdictional categories for commenting, in which they will submit all their comments to DEO during the review for state or to local government for expedited, as I will discuss in a second. So, for example, that impacts how DEP comments, how FWC comments, as well as the regional planning councils, the Department of State, water management districts, and in certain times, when they are involved, Department of Education. Now, what I was alluding to was the fact that DEO, as I said, DEO oversees the comprehensive plan amendment review process. And as I discussed, there's 3 plan and amendment review processes, and we'll focus really on the expedited state review and state coordinated reviews. As you know, comprehensive plan amendments can generally be either new plans for newly incorporated local governments, future land use map or flume designation changes, or text changes to the goals, objectives, and policies within the comprehensive plan. Now, as I said earlier, the expedited state review and state coordinated review were split off from the regular original comprehensive plan review process. The one that you will see the most action with is the expedited state review. Now, the expedited state review is I could say drastically different compared to the original comprehensive plan review process, in which is a 30-day review window. And DEO, as along with all the other reviewing agencies, have 30 days to submit their comments for a proposed comprehensive plan or plan amendment, comprehensive plan amendment to a local government. That's very different from the original comprehensive plan system that was in place prior to 2011. Now, the state coordinated review process is very similar, if not almost identically the same as the original process. But here's an important distinction. Not all plan amendments are applicable to expedited, and not all comprehensive plan amendments are applicable to the state coordinated. Underneath the statute, particularly for underneath section 163-3187, 3184, really. All comprehensive plan amendments can go through the expedited state review process except for 5 types. And that includes those are in areas designated as area of critical state concern, amendments that propose a rural land stewardship area, amendments for a sector plan, amendments that update the local comprehensive plan for an evaluation and appraisal, and comprehensive plans for newly incorporated municipalities. In addition, it can go without saying, small-scale amendments cannot be processed in either of these other reviews. But to go forward and talk a little bit about state coordinated review, the state coordinated review is almost exactly the same as the original comprehensive plan process with the 60-day, in which DEO has 60 days to review proposed comprehensive plan amendments, and reviewing agencies have 30 days to submit their comments to DEO. This is different from the expedite, in which the expedite you submit your comments to the local government. Now, even though at the proposed stage, expedited stage, state coordinated are very different, please note that at the adopted stage, both expedited state review amendments and state coordinated review amendments are treated the same. Now, overall, for the review of comprehensive plan and plan amendments, the changes of importance that we've just identified is to shift the jurisdiction of review for FDOT for appointed state resources and facilities, and the removal of the mandatory implementation of transportation concurrency statewide. Now, I'm going to focus this portion of this presentation on transportation concurrency amendments, and that's because for the perspective of district reviewers and local governments, the other usual types of amendments, such as future land use amendments and text amendments, have not seen any real change since 2010. Now, since the 2010 update, local governments now have the option of rescinding or continuing to implement transportation concurrency for their jurisdictions. As we indicated previously, there have been local governments who have rescinded transportation concurrency, but the majority still continues to implement. Thanks to House Bill 319, those who choose to rescind, underneath the changes from House Bill 319 to Section 163-3180, rescission of transportation concurrency can be processed through an expedited state review comprehensive plan amendment. Now, for those local governments that continue implementation of transportation concurrency, District reviewers and local governments should be aware that within this handbook, underneath section 3.8.1, there are several key requirements that have to be adhered to for the continuation of transportation concurrency. Some of those requirements include exemption of public transit facilities from concurrency, the allowance of an applicant for a DRI development order to be exempt, and several other requirements. Now, in addition to changes with transportation concurrency, as I just briefly identified towards the beginning of this, you saw changes from House Bill 7207, which repealed statutory provisions for basically all of the concurrency alternatives that were in statute prior to 2011. That includes the transportation concurrency exception areas, transportation concurrency management areas, multimodal transportation districts, and long-term concurrency management systems. Now, even though those are repealed, there are local governments that still have and may continue to use these existing alternatives. So reviewers and other staff should just be aware of that. In addition, with changes since 2010, Section 163.31.82 for transportation concurrency backlogs has been revised for transportation deficiencies. And that in itself contains another alternative for concurrency, which will be discussed in more detail in Chapter 5. Okay. Now, let me change now my focus, and I mentioned I was going to talk about this at one point. Sector plans and rural land stewardship area programs. House Bill 7207 was very big for these two programs, in particular sector plans. Now, the slide before you briefly describes the general changes which have taken place for these programs, sector plans, changes to designation criteria, development standards, and agency roles, and rural land stewardship areas, or RLSAs, changes to the initiation process, designation, review process, and coordination. Of the two, I'm going to first start with the RLSA program. Okay. So the RLSA program in 2011 was given its own statute for implementation, which is Section 163.3248. The process for an RLSA program to begin for local government is a bit more simplified now as it compared prior to 2011. Now, rural land stewardship areas are really to help protect agricultural and environmental areas. The process for setting up an RLSA overlay begins with selection of an area that is appropriate to the program. These areas must be at least 10,000 acres and outside municipalities and or established urban service areas. Now, important to note with the RLSA program, which changed from 2011, was initiation process. As I was saying, it's a bit more simplified. Previously, the process was initiated by a preliminary agreement with DEO, which was formerly DCA, with the local government and the local landowners. Now the process begins as a request from the landowners to the local government to create a comprehensive plan amendment. And as I said previously with the comprehensive review methods, this is one of those amendments that would go through the state coordinated review process. Now, I'm going to start talking about the sector plan program. The sector plan program of the two large-scale planning programs has the most planning activity to date and has seen a significant surge in popularity. You've probably seen the news about sector plans such as Sugar Hill in Hendry County, Bay Walton in the Panhandle, Wellness Way in Lake County, and the Vision in Alachua, Plum Creek in Alachua County. The original sector plan program started in 1998. With the success of that pilot program, the state opened up the sector plan program to the rest of the state and promoted it as an alternative to development of a regional impact program. Changes from House Bill 7207 changed the destination criteria for sector plans, making it that instead of 5,000 acres, areas to be designated as a sector plan must be 15,000 acres. And also created two ways for a sector plan to be created: a regular way in which a local government puts forth a comprehensive plan amendment to designate for a sector plan, or a future land use map conversion from a previous future land use amendment which adheres to the criteria for sector plans and was adopted prior to 2011. Now, sector plan, like I said, was around before 2011, and the components of a sector plan prior to 2011 and after 2011 are basically the same. There are two components: the long-term master plan and the detailed specific area plan. The long-term master plan acts as the overarching framework for the sector plan, while the detailed specific area plan, or DSAP, implements that long-term master plan. Now, the long-term master plan is the only one of the two components that is adopted into the comprehensive plan, and it must be done through state coordinated review. The detailed specific area plan is adopted by a local development order, and they're usually 1,000 acres plus, and they basically implement the long-term master plan in specific areas. Now, the long-term master plan is adopted through the comprehensive plan process for the state coordinated review process, can be incorporated into existing comprehensive plan elements or made into its own element. Another major change, and this is not, of course, legislation, but for the update to the handbook, is the resource guides. Now, previous editions of the handbook has had resource guides, and we simplified the resource guides for this edition. And there's 4 of them, as you can see on the slide. Legal authority for department review, which goes over the relevant statutory and administrative rule references, as well as pertinent FDOT procedures that they apply to Chapter 3. FDOT and DEO online resources, which provides links to online resources in regards to topics covered in these chapters. In this chapter, including websites hosted by DEO regarding transportation concurrency and sector planning. And finally, local government comprehensive plan flume amendment review checklist. And this checklist, as I'll show you on the next slide here, provides a general guide for reviewers for the criteria to consider when conducting a review of a local government comprehensive plan future land use amendment. And that's all I really had to say regarding Chapter 3 today. If there's any questions, I can answer them.
I don't see any questions at this time.
All right, then I will turn it over to Martin Guttenplan to go over Chapters 4 and 5.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, Martin, and I am still, yes, you now have control.
Yeah?
Yes, you do. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks. Nothing's happening yet. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I will finish out most of this relatively quickly. In terms of changes to Chapter 4 on DRIs, the main thing to note is that most of the various bills have either eliminated or raised the thresholds for most type of development to be considered a DRI. And we'll cover some of that as we go along. But the idea is that a DRI, in case you don't know, is something that will, a large development that will affect citizens in more than one county. So specifically, there are lots of new exemptions, as we mentioned. Also, revisions to the thresholds for substantial deviation and essentially built-out criteria time extensions. And what we were all getting used to, this new acronym DULAs, they are now dense urban land areas. They now apply only to DRIs. And so their exemptions for DULAs are for all three types: a municipality, a county, or a county without an urban service areas. The key thing here with the DULAs, that list is updated yearly. It's on the DEO website, and if you're not familiar with the concept, it's basically a municipality with a density of more than 1,000 people per acre. Keep on moving here. In addition to the DULAs, there are non-DULA areas that are now exempt from DRI review. And that would be, and all these are specified in statute, and you can find all this information within the handbook. But the non-DULA cities, urban infill, community redevelopment areas, downtown revitalization areas, cities with urban service area boundaries, and similar for the counties. And here are the some of the statutes that apply to these. Note that under the Rural Land Stewardship and under the sector planning guidance, the Detailed Specific Area Plan, or DSAP, is also exempt from DRI review. So you need to do your work up front very carefully when you're reviewing the long-term master plan. And development in airport and campus master plans is also exempt. So what's left? The process is outlined for DRIs very, hopefully very clearly within the handbook. And also, if you noted that first graphic on the chapter, which we showed for just a few seconds, it showed the process overlaid over the comprehensive amendment, comp plan amendment review process. So, okay, moving along, the notice of proposed change, the NOPC, that is where most of the action on DRIs is happening now, as local governments try to take advantage of some of those changes in legislation and renegotiate their DRIs. And any of these do fall under department review, and they need to be turned around quickly in 30 days. There's nothing new about the NOPC process per se, other than there should be a lot of them. And it will affect many of you. It affects your day-to-day operation. Not much change on the other development review types. In the handbook, there's also checklists for every stage of the DRI review. These, might even be useful for other types of development review, but they're designed for DRI review. There's 7 different checklists, and they're pretty extensive. I'd like to move on to Chapter 5, which is at least show you that it exists and what it's for. And this one concerns mitigation of development. And the idea is it's not just about adding capacity any longer. It's about increasing the efficiency of the system, increasing modal options such as transit, bicycling, and walking, and a combination of those. The role of the department stays the same when it's identifying impacts and then mitigating them. And again, the focus of the department review is on resources and facilities of state importance. So reviewers need to stay focused on that. The other piece is that local governments that can retain concurrency are required to consult with DOT when proposed amendments affect the SIS. Other major shifts in regard to 2010, since 2010, are the repeal of proportionate fair share mitigation provisions, revisions to the regulations regarding proportionate share or prop share, and as I mentioned, the local entities need to consult FDOT on impacts to the SIS. There's a new definition for transportation deficiency, and this definitely affects the prop share mitigation, and it's fairly complex, a little theoretical. I know the Office of Policy Planning has been trying to get a handle on some of these prop share agreements in this world of transportation deficiencies, which basically mean when it comes time to do the prop share calculation, it's considering that any of the deficient facilities from the background vested and projected trips are all fully mitigated before you take into account the trips of the new development. And as is before with anything with proportionate share mitigation, it's really about negotiation and arriving at mutual solutions. In addition, for those local governments without transportation concurrency, there are other alternatives such as mobility fees mitigation, and in those cases, any amount paid out needs to be reduced dollar by dollar from future mitigation costs. Again, this is something that's a little, when we're over time, I can't go into any detail on. but it's in Chapter 5 and it's in statute. So to wrap up, consider other mitigation strategies besides just adding lanes, roadway lanes, congestion management, transit-oriented development, pedestrian bike connectivity, increasing street network connectivity, etc. And I'm going to turn it back to Gina at this point so she can wrap us up.
Thank you, Marlon. Okay,
You're welcome.
this was only an introduction to the Impact Handbook and what's new in the handbook. But we plan to have a series of webinars as well as live trainings in 2015. So if you're signed up with the FDOT Contact Manager, you will get notices on how to sign up for these trainings. Let me go to the next slide. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than normal. Very good. In order to be informed of our upcoming training or new handbooks, you should be signed up with the FDOT Contact Manager. So I'm going to ask you if you have already signed up or not.
Okay, I'm going to ask people to answer this this poll to get an idea of how many of you let's see. Bear with me while I find that poll. What we do is we have this FDOT Contact Manager that we can send you instructions for, and it will keep you informed of not only just what we were talking about today, but any new training and level of service, highway capacity manual, highway capacity software, access management, almost anything that our division puts together guidance and training on, and I would highly recommend it. And I'm gonna close the poll here because it's a pretty interesting group of answers here. So I'm going to share it with you. Yeah, so you can see most of you have signed up for it, and I appreciate it. Some of you haven't, and in addition to the handout of this presentation, we will send you a link and some instructions on how to sign up. If you can't remember, just sign up again. And I say that because we've had a chance to take a look at some of the addresses that are on there. There are a bunch of old addresses. You know, a lot of people will have changed companies they work for, and if you don't remember, just sign up for it. And when we send out notification, believe it or not, we're sending it out to 6,000 people. So don't be afraid that you've done it twice. It may warn you that you've done it twice, and if so, I think there's a way to get with our offices that handle this, and they'll send you your password. Any trouble on this, get back with us. As I said, we will send instructions on how to do this, and we definitely hope that you enjoyed this training. Know this was a lot of material handed out to you, and that's why in the future, like Gina showed you, we are gonna split it up, and I'm gonna hide the the polls now, but yeah, we are going to split this up. So and the transportation section will be 2 sessions long, and so you'll know that. And once again, as Gina said, this is not the only training we have. Gina is in charge of getting a lot of our training together, as well as a number of other people in our section. And without any better way of saying it, I think our training is good and it's fun. So with that, I'd like to thank you and appreciate you taking the opportunity and taking your time out of your busy schedule to listen to us. And Gina said that she would go through and say thank you in all these languages. And if
well, I can say it in English though, but thank you everyone for joining us, really. We hope that you all enjoyed this presentation, and please send us your comments, and but we will send you a link in an upcoming email with all the information and the links that we mentioned during this webinar. And so if there are no other questions that we can answer at this time, we will take this opportunity to end this webinar. And thank you again, and have a great evening.
yeah, thank you.